Hi everyone, my name is Laurel Jones, and today I'm excited to share a lesson plan that I've developed for my third grade classroom. This lesson combines math and English language arts in a way that I found really engages my students, helping them connect stories with mathematical concepts. In math, we're focusing on interpreting whole number quotients, like being able to divide a set of objects equally, so taking a group of objects and putting them into equal groups. Something we will explore with the standard MGSE 3 OA 2. In English language arts, we're going to dive into character analysis and writing informative texts based on the two ELA standards, ELA GSE 3RL3 and ELA GSE 3W2. Our goals for this lesson are for the students to grasp the concept of division as equal sharing using the story The Doorbell Rang. This is one of my absolute favorite stories because it really lets us dive deeper into math standards as well as understanding what is being read using comprehension. They will use it as the central text of our entire lesson. They'll also be describing the characters and creating division problems based on the scenarios from the story that we read. From a teacher's perspective, I am going to be able to have a firm understanding of division and storytelling so that I'm able to connect these texts for the students using previously understood knowledge as well as division equations to help us completely understand. Also, being able to have thoughtful, high-level questioning will be very crucial for guiding them in deeper in both math and in our narrative that we are reading. So with differentiation and pedagogical knowledge, as a teacher, I know differentiation is so important to me. I have so many different types of students, whether they come from different backgrounds, whether they are high-level students, low-level students, or anything. So it is always about ensuring that every student, no matter their ability level, can succeed. Our motto at my school is together we can make a difference, and that is one thing I love, just because being able to differentiate for every student is so vital, I feel like, and it makes things run more seamlessly. For example, in our lesson with The Doorbell Rang, I am meeting my struggling learners where they are at while still challenging my advanced students. So I'm really focusing on helping those lower level students because I know they probably will struggle, but I'm also going to make sure my higher level students are more developed in being challenged because I don't want them to be bored. I'm also using what's called pedagogical content knowledge, or PCK, which means I'm not just going to teach math and language arts separately by themselves like we're used to. I'm doing it in a way that makes the material click for these students by integrating strategies like using visuals and storytelling. So I'm really going to make sure that these students completely understand the story and the concept at hand by being able to use visual knowledge so that they can be hands-on and really focus on using those materials. The first approach I decided to use was the read aloud. I absolutely love read alouds. I think they are so beneficial for students, especially in the third grade. It's a powerful tool that really helps our students develop their listening comprehension and spark some amazing discussions. Throughout the curriculum that we're using in my classroom, they will listen to a variety of read alouds, and they are able to ask questions and use comprehension questions to answer what we have just heard. So this is one of my absolute favorite things to use in the classroom. Like I said, in this lesson, I use The Doorbell Rang to explore division in a fun and very relatable way. I'm making sure that these students are engaged and wanting to read by doing this lesson in a way that they are excited about. While I'm reading, I want to keep an eye on how engaged my students are, just because I know a lot of my students will get distracted very easily. So I'm going to be looking for verbal and nonverbal cues that show that they're connecting with the story and the math concepts. Read alouds, the definition is when a teacher reads a book aloud to students, engaging them in a story to help develop their listening and comprehension skills. Just like I said, I'm going to make sure that they are understanding this by looking for those nonverbal and verbal cues within my classroom to help them completely and fully understand the material at hand. My evidence. Here in this first picture, you can see that my students are actively participating during the read aloud. I had them listen to the story through a YouTube video for a student doing the read aloud, just because it seemed a little bit easier for them to hear it from someone their own age rather than me hearing it and reading it to them. They're actively following along. They were very eager throughout this entire thing. Every time the doorbell rang, they got so excited to see who was going to be at the door next. I really love seeing how involved my students get with these sessions, just because they are so interested and always are asking questions, which is sparking their questioning and comprehension skills. So my reflection. One of the strengths of a read aloud approach for me is how much my students love the read alouds. They're always, like I said, so engaged and so eager to learn. But I know there is a lot of room for improvement. I'm a third-year teacher, so I'm still learning the different skills that really work for these students, and I plan also to pre-read the story. That was something I did not do, and I probably should have done beforehand, just because I knew it would have made things a little bit easier for me. Let's see. And I'm also going to be able to develop some more deeper questioning for my higher level students, just because I know those higher level students get bored really easily with a read aloud. So this allows them to really be focused and really engaged with the material. I'm also going to partner. I love doing Think, Pair, Share. I love partnering my students. So I will be partnering a higher level student up with a lower level student. I think this really allows for my lower level students to be more engaged, because they're hearing what these higher level students are asking, what they're thinking about. After the story was over, I had or will have them work together and talk about different ideas that they saw during the story. And I think that is just a vital thing and key skill to allow my lower level students to be involved. For my reflection, I noticed and chose this book because I knew it would challenge my higher level students. They'd be exposed to the richer vocabulary as well as deeper thinking. This really allowed them to think deeply when I asked them some various high level questions. But like I said, I still needed to plan ahead and get some higher, more deeper thinking questions for them. I really knew that this book would allow my higher level students to lead the discussion. Like I said, especially when we did Think, Pair, Share. I was able to pair a higher level student with a struggling student to allow more engagement during the read aloud. This really showed how engaged my students were. For my struggling readers, I know that they can be very difficult for lower level students, because they struggle to follow along with the story and really participate in the discussions, because they get a little lost. But that is completely okay. So I decide to make it more beneficial for them. I pair them, like I said, with a higher level student, so that when we did partner discussions, they had someone to help them become more engaged with the story. I really was able to monitor and walk around and noticed how engaged these lower level struggling students were with our discussion, because they were paired with a higher level student and they were chit-chatting and having a great discussion on the story at hand. So my second approach, slide 8, is hands-on learning. Hands-on learning is when students learn by doing activities rather than just listening or watching. So this really allows them to get their hands dirty. One of my favorite quotes is make messes, take chances, get messy from Miss Frizzle. And this is one of my favorite things with hands-on learning. It really works well because it lets students actively use materials and try things. Being able to move your hands and touch and feel things really allows my students to remember what they were learning. So this is why I decided to use hands-on learning. To monitor my students' behavior, I wanted to observe them and document their engagement. I will always be walking around with a clipboard, just making sure that they are actively working or participating. But I will also, when I see a student struggling, I will also adjust and group them with somebody else or move them somewhere else and complete a simpler activity if I notice they are really struggling and need some more help. So my evidence of approach 2. This second piece of evidence shows students using serial to make equal groups to determine a division problem. So after we read the doorbell rang, the students really focused on using cookies or cookie cereal since the story was about cookies. They were using hands-on learning to gain a better understanding of division equations. As I walked around, I noticed that people were drawing circles and grouping their cereal based on the problem at hand. They were clearly following instructions and procedures within my classroom. You can see with the students that they are really actively learning and wanting to participate. And the picture on the other side uses just the reference that they wanted to resemble after solving a division problem. So my reflection of approach 2. For me to improve on my hands-on learning, I need to clearly make sure that my activities I plan are well organized and match what I want my students to learn. I noticed that I really didn't plan enough, and I really needed to because this took a lot of time. I also need to give clearer instructions so that I can support my students. Just because like I said, we ran out of time because our students were not fully engaged in playing and noticing that they needed a little more help. So I decided that the next time I do an activity like this, I would give them 5 minutes to just play with the materials and let them feel them and touch them so they completely understand what is being used. However, for my strengths, I noticed that hands-on learning keeps them so engaged and so excited about lessons. They want to keep learning. After we finish the lesson, they ask me, can we do this again? It really helps them understand concepts better by allowing them to explore ideas in a fun way. If we were doing just basic division problems, they got really bored really easily. So being able to do hands-on learning is so beneficial for them. It really puts a smile on my face being able to see them work together and solve problems as a team. For approach 2, the reflection. My above-level learners help advanced students by making tough ideas easier to understand. Like I said, we use serial to create division equations, and that lets them move pieces around to see how the numbers work in division. Being able to manipulate and move really allows them to gain a deeper understanding. This not only keeps them interested, but lets them think more deeply about math. I was able to give them harder problems, let them come up with their own equations to manipulate with our serial to understand division. However, with our struggling students, I knew that using a hands-on tool makes multiplication and division much more engaging for them just because they're not writing facts constantly and getting bored. So by using these pieces of serial to create and solve multiplication problems and division problems, like grouping them into sets or divide into a smaller pile, they can visually and physically interact with the math concepts. Like I said, being able to manipulate with their hands really allows them to get a deeper understanding of what they're doing. I was able to group these students with a higher level student just to help them maintain their understanding and focus during the lesson. I noticed that that really did a lot of good, being able to pair them together.